Well, g'day, and welcome back again to Zhaoqing, and we are still down in this. Actually, we'll give you a look where we are. We'll get the camera up, give you a little look around here. So, we're at this lake here that we just walked around with the last video. So the last video we started sort of over this corner. We walked around past these houses, apartment buildings up the back, right the way around through here. And we wound up back in this little park down here. And we are now sitting, let's take a little walk out here, give you a little look at where we are now. So we are now sitting underneath this little covered area, which is sort of sitting out in the lake here. We're sort of out away from the edge of the lake. So we're well out in the lake. So what we're going to do today, we're not actually walking around anywhere today. We're actually going to, give me a moment. I'm just going to oh, come on. Set up my battery pack, hook this up to the camera because the battery is getting a little low. So yeah, as with everything else, my Xiaomi battery pack. Okay, we're not quite sat in there right yet. Okay, so today we are, let's just move this camera over a little bit. Today we're going to have a look at the news. I've heard plenty of comments over the years that Chinese people don't know what's going on. They're never informed about anything. They don't know what's happening. So we're actually going to have a look at some news sites here today. These are all Chinese news sites, but they all have English versions. I have gone in, I've looked at the Chinese versions of the same sites. They all appear to have the same stories with the same pictures. The ones that I didn't go and look through everything. I'm not exactly sure what's going to come up on these apps at the moment. I haven't sort of pre-looked or anything. But yeah, we're going to have a look through at some of these. So let's turn our screen recorder on so that we can actually put this up beside me here. So the first one we're going to have a look at is the China Daily. China Daily, I think it is actually a primarily English language newspaper. I'm sure they do a Chinese version as well. But so we're just going to go through. We've got 3 news sites we're going to look at, and we're just going to go through the headlines of each. We're not going to do a full news bulletin or anything. We might skip through a few things, have a look at what else we can find. But our first story here. Hainan to launch independent customs operations December 18. We're not going to read the entire article, but we'll have a look at sort of the first paragraph or two. So the Hainan Free Trade Port will launch island-wide independent customs operations on December 18, a key step in transforming the tropical island into a globally significant free trade hub, a senior official announced Wednesday. Wang Chenglin, Vice Chairman of the National Development and Reform Commission, confirmed the date at a press conference hosted by the State Council Information Office. The move marks a milestone in China's efforts to boost economic openness and attract foreign investment. A lot more information here. So over the past 5 years, Hainan has significantly expanded its global ties, with foreign direct investment reaching 102.5 billion yuan, averaging 14.6% annual growth. Outbound investment surged to 9.78 billion, showing an average annual increase of 97%. So yeah, sounds like Hainan's doing very well. We'll have to get over there for a trip sometime and have a look. Right, what's our next story? Japan PM Ishiba reaffirms his intention to stay in office. Tokyo, Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba on Wednesday reiterated his intention to remain in office, denying reports of his imminent resignation and emphasising the need to avoid a political vacuum. Okay, we're not going to follow up too much on that. I know nothing about Japanese politics. I wouldn't have known who the Prime Minister in Japan was if I didn't just read that. Okay, business news. Global investors more bullish on Chinese assets. China's capital markets are gaining increasing traction among global investors as foreign investment surged back in the first half of this year, supported by the country's economic resilience, continuing opening up policies, and growing demand for more diversified and renminbi-denominated assets, officials and experts said on Wednesday. Yeah, the continuing opening up policies I really like here. There's often criticisms about China not being open enough. I like the way they do things here. They don't just say, right, bang, we're going to institute this huge change all at once. We're going to do it little bit by little bit, slowly. When problems arise, instead of it being a huge, big problem, they're little problems. They can fix them, and then they continue on expanding that policy. And yeah, I find that really, really good. The drawback is things don't generally happen quickly here, but they happen carefully. They do happen, but yeah, you've got to be patient, and they're not just going to jump in to something without a lot of work beforehand. What else have we got here? Right, oh, here we go, one relating to Australia. Analysts hail turnaround in China-Australia ties. The first visit to China by Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese since winning re-election in May signals warming ties and growing prospects for cooperation amid the changing global economy. According to a media release from the Prime Minister's office, Albanese's visit was also an opportunity to continue advancing Australia's security and economic interests. I find that interesting. Advancing Australia's security. I'd like to know how they're doing that. What talks they had. Australia, for the longest time, a big criticism of mine has been that they tend to just blindly follow America. And all the stuff that's happening in the South China Seas between the navies and incidents here and there with the air forces and stuff, if we stayed in our own background, these things wouldn't be happening. But we seem to have this need to go and encroach in other countries' areas. So yeah, I hope they do something. America, with the current way America's going, I think most countries in the world need to step away and start looking at doing things for their own interests, not because America tells us to. So yeah, no, I hope we do get on a better track between Australia and China, because I love both countries, and it would be really nice to see them actually work closer together and have a better, we're China's Australia's biggest trading partner. We shouldn't be at loggerheads like we are, or like we have been. And who knows? Right, last one here. Hero Hog highlights China's overlooked wartime story. Okay, this might be interesting. Who's Hogg? George Hogg. Okay, right. Although it is 80 years since the end of World War II, the name George Aylwin Hogg still resonates deeply in both China and the United Kingdom. Born in 1915, Hogg was a young British journalist who arrived in China during one of its darkest hours, the brutal Japanese invasion. Yet rather than returning to the safety of home, Hogg chose to stay and risk his life to support and protect the Chinese people. His legacy, marked by selfless dedication and deep humanity, is being honoured this year through memorial events in both countries and a renewed effort to tell his story. Okay, we're not going to go through this whole story here, but we might do a bit of research on this guy. Sounds an interesting guy, and do a video about him in the near future. Yeah, it's nice when you can find stories of, you know, cooperation and people from another country coming to help out a country that is less fortunate than their own country. So that is China Daily. Let's have a look at CGTN, their headlines. Okay, so we've got the Hainan Free Trade Port as one. China Commerce Minister, EU Commerce Commissioner hold trades. Okay. Chinese Commerce Minister Wang Wentao held a video meeting with European Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security, Maros Sefcovic, on Tuesday, according to a statement released by China's Ministry of Commerce on Wednesday. The ministry said the two sides held candid and in-depth discussions on China-EU economic and trade cooperation and its key issues. Yeah, same as what I said about Australia. You know, the EU, get away from just blindly following America. Stand up for your own bloody rights. You know, I expect there will be differences between China and the EU, but there shouldn't be as many differences as there are. China rejects accusation of South China Sea at UN Security Council debate. China's permanent representative to the United Nations, Fu Kong, on Tuesday firmly rebutted US accusations against China regarding the South China Sea during a high-level open debate at the UN Security Council on multilateralism and peaceful settlement of disputes. Fu spoke first, followed by the US representative, who made unsubstantiated claims about China's actions in the South China Sea. In response, Fu took the floor again for a second round to counter the US allegations. Yeah, I don't give much credibility to any United States accusations. Their history of being open and honest is very, very lacking. You know, the South China Sea, you know, there's issues between China, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, other countries, Laos maybe, I can't remember all the countries involved. Let the countries involved sit down and figure it out. We don't need you in here, America. Go and look after your own backyard. I always ask the question, how would America and Americans feel if the Chinese Navy came and started sailing up and down off the west coast of the United States, you know, between Hawaii and California? They wouldn't like it, and they'd ask China very politely, I'm sure, or maybe not so politely, to leave. You know, go away, mind your own backyard. We don't need you. We don't want you. You're not invited to the party. Right. Trump says trade deal struck with Japan includes 15% tariff. Oh my God. Still on this tariff thing. I'm not even going to read any of this. Actually, no, we will. President Donald Trump on Tuesday said the US and Japan had struck a trade deal that includes a 15% tariff that will be levied on US imports from the country. It's just ridiculous. I've said before, you know, tariffs can be a good tool for your economy when they're implemented right. You know, Australia, when we had we don't have a car industry in Australia anymore, but when we had a car industry, we had tariffs on imported cars. So, you know, I think Toyota had a factory in Australia, Mitsubishi had a factory in Australia, I think Nissan did. so that they could be producing cars in Australia to avoid the tariff. It was, encouraging companies to come and produce in Australia. Companies that didn't do that had to pay a tariff. BMWs, Mercedes, Volkswagens, you had to pay a tariff on all of them cars. A lot of the European manufacturers, a lot of the American manufacturers, because they didn't produce in Australia. But when I haven't actually looked into this, but when the Australian car industry died, which it died, I can't remember how long ago, like early 2000s, when the last sort of factory closed down, maybe mid-2000s, I would hope all of those tariffs went, because we didn't have an industry to protect anymore. America, wanting to bring industry back to America, well, before they levied all these tariffs, they should have had plans in place so the industry was ready to go. If you want, I don't know, say iPhone to be manufacturing their iPhones back in America, before you impose these tariffs, you should have helped Apple get factories ready to go so that they were ready to build. Because as it is, a lot of the industries that America's trying to get back, it's going to take 5-10 years before they can do anything. And in the meantime, the American consumers are paying through the nose. I know Trump and his cronies are trying to tell everybody that the countries that are having tariffs imposed on them are paying the tariffs. No, they're not. The importers pay the tariffs, and those tariffs, the costs of those, are passed on to the consumer. The importers aren't going to wear these costs. They can't afford to wear these costs. They'll go broke. It's absolutely ridiculous. I know me and Tony have disagreements about Trump, but I just can't see any intelligence in the guy. But yeah, we'll move on. We'll maybe need to sit down and have another chat to Tony sometime about that one. Okay, last one in the headlines here. Trump pulls US out of UNESCO for second time, reasons and reactions. President Trump has decided to pull the United States out of the woke and divisive United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, the White House said on Tuesday, repeating a move he took in his first term that was reversed by Joe Biden. Here's another thing, Trump just pulling out of international agreements. It's just a repeat of the old isolationist policies of the United States back in the early 20th century, which might have been fine back then, but now, the world's an integrated economy. It's an integrated place. There's a lot of research is collaborative between a lot of different countries. A lot of countries help each other out. If Trump wants to pull away, I don't see how that can be good for America. A lot of the things that Trump and the MAGA base, there's a lot of people out there who just say, I don't like science. If you think science is wrong, go and prove it wrong. It could be a Nobel Prize in it for you. But to disagree with things that are researched, backed up with evidence, investigated by others. What is the scientific method? The going in, looking at people's, publishing your research so that other people can look at it and try and prove it wrong. Other researchers, other people trained in the field. You hear, I think a big issue with America is, and we talked about religion a few videos back, my thoughts on religion. I think a big problem with America is their level of faith in their religion and how that affects their views on other topics, science especially. You know, the young Earth creationists, which are largely based in America, believe the Earth is 6,000 years old. We have all this evidence, but they believe an old book written by bloody Iron Age sheep herders, goat herders. It's just, I truly don't understand. The same with things like evolution. You know, evolution, they all like to talk about Darwin and how Darwin was wrong. And yeah, Darwin was wrong about a hell of a lot of stuff. But we've had, what, 150 years of research since Darwin. There's a, you know, Darwin wasn't perfect and he got a lot of stuff very, very wrong. He was, I guess you could have called him progressive for his time, but you know, that time, when you look at it today, would be very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very, very conservative. You know, stop talking about Darwin. We've moved past, you know, the scientific community's moved past Darwin. Yes, he came up with a really, really good theory, the theory of evolution, but there's a hell of a lot more research since then. But these guys want to doubt the research because of, again, their book written by Iron Age goat herders who had no idea about DNA or germ theory or anything else. It's just crazy. So that's CGTN. Let's just have a look down here. Have we got any? China and EU explore frontiers of innovation. Tang architecture, so sort of more social stuff, spaced stuff, the tariff whirl. Let's see what they've got to say about the tariff whirl. Okay, so this is just all different news stuff about all the tariff stuff that's going on in the world. All right, so that was CGTN. One more news site we're going to look at here is Global Times. So, again, their lead story, Hainan Free Trade Port. Right, India announces to open tourist visa application to Chinese citizens. Didn't know they didn't have it. India announced on Wednesday to open tourist visa application to Chinese citizens starting from July 24, 2025. So that will be tomorrow, although a couple of days ago by the time we post this. The Embassy of India in China announced via its Sino Weibo account on Wednesday that starting from July 24, Chinese citizens can apply for a tourist visa to visit India after completing an online application, scheduling an appointment, and personally submitting their passport and other required documents to the Indian visa application centres. Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou. Yeah, no more information than that. I'm surprised that they didn't already have that. With the size of China's population, the number of tourists who travel overseas every year, yeah, there's a lot of people in China, I'm sure, who would be really interested in having a look at India. Right, what else have we got here? In front of media, Trump tells Marcos he doesn't mind if Philippines gets along with China. Okay, let's read this. During a meeting at the White House on Tuesday, US President Donald Trump told visiting Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos, "I don't mind if he gets along with China because we are getting along with China very well." Really? The comment was seen by the media as catching Marcos off guard, interpreting it as a stunning message to the Philippine president regarding China. When asked how he plans to balance his country's relationships between the US and China, Marcos said there was no need to balance. Our strongest partner has always been the US. However, in response, Trump said, "We're getting along with China very well, and I don't mind if the president dealt with China. You know, because I think he has to do what's right for his country." Well, shocked and stunned, I agree with Donald Trump. Yeah, every country, you should be working with America on issues that are of concern between America and your country. But then with China, different countries should be dealing with China on those issues, different issues. Forget, you've got to look at each situation, each issue on its own. You can't bundle all these issues up together. It's one thing that I've always criticised politics in the West, and I think America's probably the worst for this, but it certainly happens in Australia and other countries as well, when they have a big policy thing that they're trying to push through, and it's very, very big and very, very broad, and it might be, say for example, a housing policy. But then within that, they try to hide little other things that have nothing to do with the housing policy. But it's things that are either put in there to gain votes from the opposition or to sneak something past the opposition. And I don't agree with that. Each policy should be debated and passed on its own merits. And the same with dealing with different countries. You should, if you've got trade issues with China, deal with those issues with China. If you've got military ties with the US, stick with that issue for the US. I'm impressed. Think he has to do what's right for his country. I think as soon as he does something that's right for his country that gives China an advantage over the US, let's see what the response is then. I think the response from Trump might turn out to be rather different, but we'll see. He might prove me wrong. What else have we got here? PLA Navy's Ship and Aviation Academies hold first joint vessel aircraft integration training. So we have a picture there, a Z-8 shipborne helicopter from the Chinese People's Liberation Army. Navy Aviation University lands on the training ship. So two major academies of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, PLA, Navy, responsible for training ship and aircraft personnel, recently conducted their first vessel aircraft integration training. An expert said on Wednesday that the move will boost training efficiency and accelerate the development of combat capabilities. All branches of military in whatever country should be working together. It's not like the old days where the army worked on the land and the navy worked at sea, and the range of weapons was, with the old sailing ships and cannons, a couple of miles. They couldn't really integrate. Now with, ships that can launch missiles 1,000 kilometres, land-based forces that can launch missiles 1,000 kilometres out to sea. We have the air forces now, it's added a third dimension to the battlefield. Individual branches of military can't be individual like that anymore. They have to work together. It's just the way it is. And we're back to there. So that's the headlines there. Okay, we're going to finish up. Right, we have an editorial piece here. Now, this is one thing I do like, reading Chinese media. When they have a news story, it is just the facts. It is totally separate from editorial stuff. Whereas in the West, a lot of news stories have sort of editorial content embedded through the news stories, trying to sway people's opinions to the way that whichever media company it is wants people to think. But let's have a look at this editorial. I've watched quite a bit of content about what's happening in Gaza over the last 2 years. Well, year and a half, coming up on 2 years. I do have my opinions. I haven't really talked about it on the channel. I did do a video a little while back where we sort of touched on the issue. Maybe it's something I need to do. But here's a Global Times editorial. The humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza must not be allowed to continue. On Monday, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that Gaza's humanitarian situation is in accelerating breakdown and that the last lifelines keeping people alive are collapsing. The same day, Gaza's health ministry reported that at least 130 Palestinians had been killed and 1,155 wounded by Israeli military operations within just 24 hours. That's just, yeah. A report by the World Food Programme on Sunday revealed that nearly 1 person in 3 is not eating for days. 93% of households in Gaza have no access to water, and more than 87% of the area are under evacuation orders or inside Israeli military zones, leaving 2.1 million civilians crammed into a small area with no medical care or medicine, where public services are completely collapsed. These alarming figures are a clear distress signal to the international community. The humanitarian disaster in Gaza must not be allowed to continue. An immediate ceasefire is imperative. This article goes on. We're going to leave that there. The Israel-Gaza thing is a subject I've sort of stayed away from because it's not really the topic of this channel. And I've sort of not talked about it, but I think I might in the near future talk about my thoughts more deeply on what's going on, because it is about the only world news thing I follow. Most world news I don't really bother about, I don't really care about, but yeah, as this has gone on and on, yeah, I shake my head in wonder that this has been allowed to go on and on. But we're going to finish up there. So that is some of what's in the news here. That's sort of the big headline stuff. We might do another follow-up and go through, we'll actually look up some more local news, not the sort of world headlines and stuff, and see what they're talking about in terms of what's happening within China itself. But yeah, that's sort of a snippet. You know, it's a very small snippet of what's in the media here. So if you've enjoyed that, hit that like button, share with friends, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. Questions or comments down there in the comments section. As always, if you have anything you would like to learn about life here in China, in Guangdong, here in Jiaqing, down there in the comment section. And finally, Facebook, A Scot in China. Come and join the community there that we're trying to build. And yeah, we'll try and get some discussions happening there. You can post further questions there. If you find China content that you can share with others, post that there. And yeah, just come and join in. But for now, thanks for watching, everybody. I'm going to head back out, jump on my bike and head home. And it's actually warmed up. When we started the first video, it was really nice, but it's actually starting to get quite hot sitting here. So we're going to head home, get out of the heat. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe, and we will see you all in the next one. Cheers.